Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bourbon and Breakthroughs. Today, I have a special guest, Dr. Keith Waggoner. He has been my coach, my personal and life and business and everything in between coach for years. And if you've been a follower or a listener of Relentless Growth, the podcast, you know Dr. Keith. He has been on there. He was on episode 14 and 83. And if you're new to Dr. Keith, well, what a perfect episode to get started, because we spent over an hour diving into some of his classics and some of the most valuable content that I think you could pick up from any coach on the planet. Here's the thing, guys. Dr. Keith Waggoner is not just any coach on the planet. That's why I work with him. He's coached Navy SEALs, senators, billionaires, and for over 25 years has been a psychologist, a high-level coach, and he's dedicated his life also to martial arts and causes and charities that help change the world. So when I say that he's somebody you really want to learn from, I mean, look, I learn from him every week, and I still took pages of notes here from our interview today. We talk about things like how to really manage your time as somebody who has a business or a lot of responsibility, tactical ways that you can improve your experience of time, how to honor your sages and not be slaves to what we call your saboteurs, those voices that want to throw you off, those disempowering thoughts. We talk obviously about bourbon, which in this episode, we feature Derringer by our friends at Rabbit Hole Distillery here in Louisville, Kentucky. An excellent, excellent bourbon. If you've never tasted it, I highly recommend it. And you'll hear our show, or you'll hear our tasting notes in the show itself. Guys, there's so much happening. You can hear my voice is a little bit hoarse because we just recorded. There was so much goodness in this podcast, including talking about Dr. Keith's nonprofit called Operation Rescue Children. If you've followed my show for any length of time, you've probably heard me talk about Operation Rescue Children. You can go to operationrescuechildren.org to learn more. This is Dr. Keith Waggoner's and Tuhan Harley Elmore's nonprofit. They help train and equip operators to stop human trafficking and sex slavery, which happens all around the world, not just in countries beyond the United States. This is happening in our own backyards. You'll hear in detail what this organization does, how they help train operators, and how they equip men in the field to stop the bad guys. Guys, this affected me so deeply when I went on retreat with Keith a few weeks ago. We watched a live demonstration from some of the most skilled operators I've ever seen in any capacity. And it almost brought me to my knees. And we rallied everyone who was there. 40 men stood up and volunteered either time, resources, money, exposure, something they could offer to the organization, because we were all compelled to help. So listen to the episode, enjoy the bourbon and the tasting notes about Derringer from Rabbit Hole. It's phenomenal. I can't say enough about it. I prefer it in a Manhattan. So if you're a cocktail person, give that a shot. But also take notes on Dr. Keith's lessons, his wisdom, and see how you might get involved with Operation Rescue Children, whether it's just sharing the episode with someone or donating directly to the cause. As always, friends, thank you for listening. I appreciate you so deeply, and enjoy the show with Dr. Keith Waggoner featuring Rabbit Hole's Derringer bourbon, which is aged in sherry casks. Fantastic show, everybody. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody, to Bourbon and Breakthroughs. I'm here with our special guest today, Dr. Keith Waggoner. Dr. Keith is my coach, dare I say mentor, if he'll have the honor. And we have a lot of value to bring to you today. Keith always brings it. That's why he is the first person in Relentless Growth or Bourbon and Breakthroughs history to be the third person, or to be a three-peat, to be on the show 3 times. So thank you, Dr. Keith, for letting us steal you away from all your businesses and your coaching clients and your wife and family today for about a great drink and maybe an hour of valuable content.
Oh, it's great to be here, Chris. Thanks. And what an honor, man. Having me on three-peat. That's I'm going to catch up with Tom Brady or something.
Well, you haven't earned the title of GOAT yet. You're just getting close. So
get close.
Yeah. Well, here's where I'd love to start. You taught me an infinite number of things over the years in our coaching, but one thing in particular stands out. I have a tendency to be impatient, to be recklessly hard on myself and to hit something like a goal or an accomplishment and then never stop and smell the roses. And you have lovingly but firmly called me out on that over and over and over,
Yep.
which has helped me lovingly but firmly call my clients out on this. And it's just one word: celebration. It's this magical mix of gratitude, presence, and honesty with where we are right now, instead of where we could be, where we should be, where we want to be, and living in that future. And so, first of all, thank you for teaching me that. And secondly, that's really where I want to start today is, what are you celebrating and why?
Me personally, what I'm celebrating?
Yeah.
Well, first off, I mean, celebrating being on here with you, it's a real honor. One of the things you've heard me say a lot is that whatever you celebrate thrives, whatever you do not celebrate dies. So I like to celebrate things just to make them come alive. You feed them. It's like anything. You got a pet, you got to feed it. You got a plant, you got to feed it. You got something good in your life, you got to feed it. And that goodness is even, some things that sometimes are hard or even mistakes. You feed that through the perspective. And so I'm celebrating being here with you today. I'm also celebrating a lot of other great stuff. Tomorrow I have 4 martial arts schools. Tomorrow we'll have our instructor weekend, and we get to go and do some cool stuff with all of our martial arts instructors, and promote some of those guys, and be with one of my oldest mentors, most dearest mentors, great grand elder Fred Weeks. He's one of Chuck Norris's original black belts, and he's a tribe elder with the Lakotan tribe. And a lot of the Native American stuff that sometimes I talk about, we bring into the events, comes from him. So I'm celebrating that.
You have built, a lot of people use the word tribe, but you have truly built a meaningful inner circle of, I like how you said, elders and wise council men and women. How do you do this? So actually, I just got a message today from somebody saying, you seem to be on really good people's podcast. When I say good people, they're like, I mean, like people who are doing great work in the world, and you're on their podcasts and you're teaching in their groups. How do you do that? And I said, man, I just show up. But for you, how do you build such an intentional tribe of wise elders?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. Part of the way you do it is just with intentionality. You decide what you want, what you need, who you want to be, and you go and you find them. And sometimes those people are older than you, and you have the privilege to sit at their feet and learn. And so you got to bring with you also a great attitude. When I'm around these elders, it's not there to compete with them or to correct them. It's really to learn. And what I find is, and I'm sure you get this even with your clients, it's the same way with mine. When people have a great attitude and they're open, willing to learn, that's where that section, that highway, if you will, of exchange happens. And so you're able to receive. But just to put it short, you have to be able to go find them. I mean, sometimes you got to search a long time for these people that you love, that you want to learn from. So I've had to do a lot of traveling, a lot of expenses to go find these people. Sometimes they don't happen easily.
And you were on the show, for everybody listening, is episode 83 with Tuhan Harley Elmore, one of the top martial artists in world history. I think is honestly not an exaggeration.
It's not.
And an extremely dangerous man. Was that relationship one that, you had to work really hard, or that was just divine timing and placement for you two?
Well, it's probably a little bit of both. Because I first came across Harley because I was looking for a martial arts instructor in the specific arts that he teaches, which is Jeet Kune Do and Kali and Silat and Muay Thai. And so I sought him out. And the divine part was that he just so happened to be in Little Rock, and I just happened to cross his flyer that he just so happened just put into a store. But then the rest of it is, hard work. I had to call him. This was back in the days before cell phones. I had to go find him. I had to connect with him. And, that's some of the things that people miss, is that great instruction, great tribe, great mentors take a lot of work. You got to feed them. You can't just expect for them to fall out of the sky into your lap.
Mm. You've mentioned feeding, I think, twice now. Can you, for anybody who hasn't heard what that means, can you describe that?
Sure. Feeding at its core, it's just like us eating. You have to feed things. You have to nurture it. You have to give energy to it. And so we use feed. We have this phrase called be the feeder, as I know you've heard us talk about. Being the feeder just simply means that you're taking control of your life, of your thoughts, your words, your deeds, your energy, and that you are the one, you have an ownership of that, and you realize you're the one that's responsible for what you feed, meaning the direction of your energy, the direction of your thoughts, the direction of what you do. So when I talk about feeding something, I mean being purposefully in the pursuit of those things so that you go and you make them, you create them. And, that's how all relationships work. You
Mm.
can't lock a relationship in a room and not feed it, as I say, and expect it to thrive. And it works the same way with celebration. Celebration is feeding yourself,
Mm.
training your brain. And there's this awesome chemical thing that happens in your brain when you feed it positivity. When you can look at something and go, oh, yeah, that may be hard. That may have been hard as hell, but man, it was good. That's feeding. That's good nutrition.
This is something I learn from you every single week. And I don't know anyone else on, if you were to like put everyone I know into a list, I would say there's no one else on that list who represents this more thoroughly than Dr. Keith, picking up a skill and feeding it consistently, And as you say, burning reps over it. You've got your guitars behind you. I know you practice those. How many martial arts systems have you practiced over the years? Because I want people to get sort of a scope of how versatile you really are.
Oh man, practice. Oh, a whole bunch. I don't even know. I've had black belts in 6 different arts.
Okay.
But practice. I mean, the whole idea is just to constantly get out there and search for what's good.
Yeah.
And a part of the philosophy that helped teach me this was the philosophy of Bruce Lee in his art of Jeet Kune Do, which is research all things, adapt, accept what's useful, reject what's not useful to you, and then create what's specifically your own. So I'm constantly in this state of going out there and researching and learning. And I mean, there's some great, brilliant people out there. I mean, I learned tons from you, man. Yeah, I'm your
Thanks.
coach, but you teach me all the time. So it's always reciprocal.
Well, definitely. Well, let's cheers to that because we have an agenda here, and it's to drink. No, I'm kidding. But we are sponsored today by our friends at Rabbit Hole Distillery, right down the road from me in Louisville, Kentucky. These guys have been absolutely outstanding to my wife and myself since we moved back from the West Coast. And today we're drinking Derringer by Rabbit Hole. And, Dr. Keith, as you pour yourself a glass, I'm going to grab one too. But I want to read one thing from Rabbit Hole to everybody to appreciate how much art and science goes into this bottle, wherever this bottle sits on a shelf, wherever it's getting poured in someone's glass. Just check this out. Their sherry cask finished bourbon, that's the Derringer that we're drinking today, is inspired by the founder's wife. The founder's name is Cave, and his wife inspired this elegant, sweet, and charming juice here. She's the muse behind their entire brand. She's a Louisville native, and she helped Cave fall in love with bourbon, luring him away from his beloved Scotch. And this simple act of affection evolved into a passion for creating whiskey that, quote, led him down a rabbit hole that he never dared alone. So here's the fun part. Dr. Keith has an infinite number of skills, accomplishments, accolades under his belt, and he doesn't, do this. He doesn't move through life in like a showy way, right? Like there's no certificates behind him. There's no, you don't see the stack of black belts, the 6 black belts back there. You don't see that he's worked with Navy SEALs and Texas Rangers and some of the other most elite operators. You don't see that he's coached senators and billionaires and that he runs 9 businesses. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That he's, raising chickens from eggs right now. that he's also, building model planes in his 14 minutes of downtime a week. You don't see any of these things. And so I wanted you to have this particular bottle, this particular expression for a few reasons. There's a lot of things happening behind the label that you just don't see right there at first glance. The other thing is Cave, the founder of Rabbit Hole, was a psychologist. I guess once a psychologist, always a psychologist, right? You don't just turn it off.
That's right. I'm
But
very interested why you said that, Chris. Interesting.
tell me more about this.
Tell me more.
And how does that psychologist term make you feel, Keith? That's what...
Yeah, exactly.
So the fun part is he really loved Scotch first, and hopefully we'll get him on the show here soon to tell the story. But long story short, he wanted to create a bourbon, a series of bourbons really, that were unique, that were something special, and that people could reach for and trust the quality of. And so that's again one of the reasons I wanted you to have this particular one, because there's so much going on behind the label in the quality. And if you don't slow down and celebrate it and really appreciate it, you may just overlook it. The last thing is, the story goes, if I remember right, he was riding in the car with his wife, and he said, "I don't know what I'm going to call this particular bourbon. This is a bold expression. We're taking sherry cask and putting bourbon in it, and the finish is almost like Scotch. It's some weird mix of things that has never been done before. Nobody's ever tried this, and I think we nailed it, but I don't know what to call it." She said, "Well, it has to be something daring, right?" And he said, "Boom, that's it, Derringer."
That's it.
So, cheers, my friend. Let me get my pour here. To more than meets the eye behind the label, and to being daring.
Let's go.
Oh, shoot. I forgot to teach you the Kentucky Chew.
I was just watching you. Wow, that's great.
So for everybody listening and watching here, I'll go back. I'll do this. I got excited. I just wanted to taste it. It's so good. A Kentucky Chew it's more chemistry than anything. Your body, when you put something high proof, this one's particularly, this one is at 93 proof, meaning it's 46.5% alcohol. When you put something like that in your mouth before having drank any other alcohol for the day or whatever, your body kind of tenses up, right? And you see a lot of people shake their head, their eyes squint, their eyebrows go up, right? And the body's trying to figure out, is this poison that's coming in here? What's going on? This seems abrasive. So a Kentucky Chew is you basically put 2 or 3 drops, not gulps or anything, into your mouth, and you move it all around your mouth. Use your tongue, roll it around your tongue, literally making this like chewing motion, hopefully not dribbling it down on your chin. But by doing that, putting just a couple drops in there, it lets your senses get acclimated. It lets your tongue get acclimated to the high proof. And then you can come back for an actual taste, and it doesn't blow out your palate. It doesn't blow out, you don't get the whole shake, like shudder thing. Now you take a gulp of it, maybe. So if you want to try that, Keith, I'm curious if that'll change your experience of it.
Well, it was pretty good at first, but let me try. So just a couple drops, you say? Just a little bit?
And then you just roll it all around?
Yeah, I'm picking up on some of those great notes there. I guess that'd probably be the sherry. It is. That does remind me of some nice Scotch. It's interesting.
Isn't it? Remember, we were talking about this yesterday, the cherry cordial almost like flavor, right? The tasting notes on this, I know everybody, it's got to be almost painful to watch, because you're like, well, I can't taste it.
That's why they got to go out and get their own bottle.
That's it. That's it. And I want to read you 3 things real quick. The aroma that the team has put together, they say it's sherry, traces of caramel, and cherry. I would completely agree. Would you?
Yeah. I was curious what that last one. I definitely the caramel I got, but the cherry, that's very interesting. I like that.
Palate. Nice. I get a couple of other things here, but the palate they have for raisins, currants, cherries, and a hint of almond and vanilla. And that's my favorite part, is this interplay of like the raisin, cherry, vanilla flavor that almost tastes like an ice cream on the finish there. But then, you're right. You get that Scotch, that sort of dry flash from the sherry. That's like, wait, what is this?
Yeah. And, when you sent me this bottle, I was really impressed, even by the packaging. As I took it out of the box, they had those notes and suggestions. And so it was very, for lack of a better word, it was very sophisticated. And I liked it because now, reading of the instructions, it really helps bring out those notes. It's almost like I've got my own guide here. in that. It was really great. I'm really impressed.
I think
I
you're going to
haven't
love.
traditionally been a bourbon guy. I just haven't had much exposure. But when we get with the special forces teams and the military guys, we all always like our scotch. But man, this is nice.
It's all about broadening your horizons, right?
That's right. That's right. Being a little daring all at the
That's
same
it.
time.
Well, let's keep going here because we can continue to enjoy this. And if you have any ice, and for anybody listening, I recommend try it and eat it first and really get the full flavor. This one is not chill filtered or anything like that, so it's got so much character straight from the barrel. Rabbit Hole toasts all of their barrels, which means for up to 20 minutes they will warm the barrel up before they char it. And this releases all kinds of sugars and goodness in the barrel. And then when they char it and those flames hit the inside, it kind of sucks all the good flavor into the part that's actually going to touch this bourbon. And so you get like a completely different situation than a traditional bourbon. So a little bit of ice will open that up. I'm going to pop one in here in a second just to see how it changes the flavor. And then for anybody listening who's a little more advanced, this in a Manhattan is stellar. So go for it and make sure you try it a couple different ways. Okay. So Dr. Keith, the first thing that I want to ask you about, since I came back from your event called Undisputed Mastery, the way I characterize this event is an intensive, a retreat-like setting for men who want to break through something emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the above. They have something that they're working to overcome, and you've created a container where boxing is the metaphor to help them fight through those barriers and come out a champion on the other side. Is that a fair way to characterize that?
Yeah, really, really well said. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And I'm not exaggerating at all, the most intense 3 days I've ever experienced. As my friend Ace and your friend Ace said yesterday in an interview, he said, "Man, you left it all on the floor." And I said, "Dude, that's exactly what Keith does, though. He has people, he helps people show up that way, where they want to leave it all out there." So, your event caused me to come back, A, a changed man, B, a little more dangerous of a man, and C, wanted to share this good news about what you guys are doing. And I kept talking about sages and saboteurs. The same question came up every time. What's that mean?
Right.
Right. So for people, I think this is an excellent introduction to the world of Dr. Keith. What are the sages? What are the saboteurs? And how does that affect everybody, whether they're a boxer, an accountant, a business owner, or anything in between?
Yeah, and that's a great question. The concept of sage and saboteur is really old. There's an author, Sherzad, with his book called Positive Intelligence that's really made it popular these days. If you haven't read that book, I'd really recommend it. He does a great job. Also, a psychologist named Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, Carolyn Dweck, and she's done a lot of research into this type of mindset. And what it is a bifurcation of really internal personifications of self is really a fancy way of saying it's like the old cartoons where you have an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. So the idea is that we have like tables, like Knights of the Round Tables. We have two tables in our mind. And one of them's filled with these advisors we call sages, which are these personifications of goodness, of positivity, of encouragement. Now, it may be tough, but what we want to do is teach people to be able to hear and listen to those internal voices of sages. We also have the table of the saboteurs. Now, just like the word, saboteurs are these guys that aren't out for your good. The main saboteur that Sherzad talks about in his program is the judge. Now we take that and we talk about this being the dragon or the demon. If you've listened to Jordan Peterson these days, he's really popularized this same old concept. But it's these voices that are inside of you that always wants to drag you down and accuse you of what we call your primary question, which is, am I enough? And they want to say you're not. You don't have what it takes. Whereas the sages are the idea that, yes, you're enough, but you got to show up. You have to develop competencies. So we talk about the term being dangerous. All that means is being capable, having skill sets and going out there and realizing that you can't default back to a place where you're non-active. You have to constantly work and develop yourself. And so in our event, we use this idea of the saboteur and the sage to create this whole process of teaching the men to hear those voices, recognize them internally, and then understand how they express them externally. So like in their behaviors and their rituals, making sense of, things that have happened to them in their life, whether it's some kind of abuse or something that happened, different types of failures. So we get them to call out the saboteurs and to challenge them to a fight, if you will. And then we get them to name themselves, actually take on the internal personification of identity of a champion, which is the idea of being undisputed. So that creates an alignment psychologically with the sages so that they can go forward and realize, hey, wait a minute. Now I know how to listen to these good positive forces that are within me.
Mm. Hey, what's up? This is Chris Goodman, and we'll be back to your episode in about 45 seconds. Listen, if you're ready to take your life and your business up to your next level of success, freedom, fulfillment, fun, all of it, you need the help of a top coach. All the best in the world at anything have a great coach in their corner. They can help you identify your goals, develop a plan to achieve them, give you accountability, give you support, give you guidance all along your way up to the top. Now, look, most coaches are created equally, we'll say. They don't perform equally, however. So if you want to get the most out of your coaching, you need to work with somebody who has a proven track record of success. And that's where I come in. I have over 15,000 hours of coaching people just like you. And after coaching countless entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives, influencers, real estate agents, you name it, I've probably coached them. I can do the same for you. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and contact me. Go to goodmancoachinginc.com. That's goodmancoachinginc.com. Fill out the quick application and let's talk about coaching you to your goals. Now let's get back to the episode. Being on the other side of it, it's so hard to put into words how much emotion you experience when you look at your saboteurs in the face, or when you actually, realize that these sages are in there the whole time as well. And if you get quiet enough, you can hear them. And I think that's the challenge. Is most of the people listening to the show, for instance, today they're probably doing something while listening to this or watching this, right? And then as soon as they get finished, and some of them have it on 1.5x speed because they're in a real hurry. Yeah. And once they get finished, they have to go on to something else. And so there's all this chatter, all this noise, and this temptation to push that sage voice or those sage voices down until they're almost inaudible, unhearable.
Yeah.
And I learned from all of you guys there that this is not something you get to do one time or have to do one time. This is a daily practice. This is a more than daily. This is a multiple times per hour practice of being aware of those saboteurs and how they show up. Lindsay and I had coffee together this morning. We do every morning. And we were talking about, I've got this new saboteur showing up, and we're calling him Juice is Worth the Squeeze guy. And he's really not that new, but now I'm understanding him. He always asks the question, is the juice worth the squeeze on this? Is this worth doing for my time, my energy, my what I get back kind of thing? And now that I'm aware of it, man, I can catch it in all kinds of circumstances, even in just a few hours today. So for people who haven't been to the event, would love to come or something like that, but just aren't there right now, how do they implement this sage saboteur awareness as a novice?
The beginning of this is just like what you just said. You said that really well, Chris, is the idea of realizing that anything that you have, let's say just as a man, inside of you, in a moment of pressure that expresses itself as negativity, calling yourself stupid or anything like that, that's evidence of the presence of these saboteurs. And so it starts with just realizing that that they're in there, that you have these saboteurs that may have started out with a great reason for you to create some kind of defense or self-protective mechanism. That then this solution that you may have created when you were a kid or at some time in your life then begins to harm you. It's like a callus that encompasses your heart and creates a real problem in your life. And then, you have to call these saboteurs for what they are. They're an enemy. They're a dark force within you, but they can't overcome you unless you allow them to. And so you must call them out. I don't know if you remember that scene from Star Wars where Luke goes into the cave to face Darth Vader. He's training with Yoda. I think it was in that third movie, I think. We have to do the same thing. We have to look, like Jung said, we have to look into the face of the shadow. We have to look into the shadow, into that darkness, and realize that we're already powerful enough to do that. So it takes courage. And this is where tribe comes in. And this is one of the things that we do for men at our event. So we help you realize you're not alone. So you're not going into that cave alone. But if you are alone, if you don't have a tribe, you can do this on your own. But you just have to realize, wait a minute, when I look into that cave, when I look into the darkness, what I'm doing in this moment is just realizing, calling out this force of negativity that's been in my life. And then you want to realize, hey, wait a minute, for every saboteur, there's an antithesis, there's a sage. And so if all you can do is identify the saboteur, all you have to do is create the opposite of that to start off in order to give birth to a sage. So if the saboteur, say you want to name him, he's a quality of your life. Like one of my major saboteurs is Dr. Nobody. One doctorate degree wasn't good enough. I had to get another one, and a master's degree, and a specialist degree, and all these other things that I've done. And a part of that I've realized was because I was always searching for significance. I was looking to be worth something because of growing up with an alcoholic father. Lots and lots of pain, lots of wounds there where I needed to prove that I was worth something. And so I called out this Dr. Nobody and was able to look him in the face and say, wait a minute, this is the guy that shows up in a conversation that if people don't stop talking and pay attention to me, Dr. Nobody has to prove something. He has to be the center of attention. And instead of really caring about other people, he's just always trying to promote himself. I don't want to be that guy. And so the opposite of Dr. Nobody is servant leader. Servant leader is that guy that's here to really bring out the best in other people. And this is the idea of, with every sage comes a principle or a rule of how to live. And so the principle behind servant leader is make other people's lives better. And so that becomes a new primary question. And the primary question is, again, the thought pattern, the thought process that happens that you can always ask yourself. How am I making this situation better? How am I making other people's life better? And this helps you make decisions. And that's how you know if you're living by the sages.
So you figured it all out. You never have any trouble. You never have any difficulty.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, one of my favorite sayings is, to have faith doesn't mean you don't struggle. To have success doesn't mean you don't have failures. Oh, man, you constantly do, right? I mean, it's constant. That's why we've got to show up and feed the sages every single day. Sometimes we also call the saboteurs clones, which is like a zombie or like ghost army. Do you remember that scene from The Lord of the Rings where the king goes in and addresses the ghost army? Do you remember that scene?
What's so funny is we were at somebody's house just a couple weeks ago, and they were watching that exact scene. And I hadn't seen it in 10 years, so it's so funny you're bringing it up. So yes, I remember.
Yeah, you remember that. We play a clip of it at Undisputed Mastery. That's exactly what happens if we don't kill those clones, kill those zombies, those ghosts, and those saboteurs every single day. They'll collect like a zombie apocalypse. There'll be a whole army of these internal voices that seek to manipulate you, to judge you, to get you to judge other people, that accuse you of not being enough. And that's what the saboteurs always do. They accuse you, and they accuse others to put you into this state of negativity and reactivity. And so killing your clones daily or conditioning this means that you have to get up and you have to work your rituals. And we teach this in the form of a structure called rituals, which is just that you create, let's say, a morning ritual or a routine for yourself where you're purposely celebrating, putting your focus on the things that you want to do, being honest with yourself about what you need to train at, get better at, correct in your life, and then you follow through with it. That's how you kill these saboteurs every single day.
I think for people who are listening and haven't experienced your work before, it might be a lot. I was just jotting a couple of notes. Dr. Nobody, servant leaders, state of reactivity, rituals, the enemy within, the antithesis of your saboteurs, sages, principles. There's a lot of vernacular that you guys, and I say you guys because this is a culture that you all have built into and build guys like me into and bring brothers into the fold. How do you compartmentalize this? You've been doing this for almost 35 years, 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Long time.
So for somebody who's, let's say, to the person who's not necessarily brand new, this isn't the first personal growth podcast they've consumed or something, but who is really interested in conquering their inner judge, or at least beating their clones and their saboteurs. How do they get started if there's this much to get a hold of?
Yeah, just pick one thought, one wound, right? Just always start with one. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by this stuff. I've burned so many rounds that I can just keep going on and on and on. And it comes naturally. But you want to just start by identifying what's one thing in my life that I think that I'm hard on myself about, that I judge myself with, that keeps showing up even in a moment of pressure where, I judge myself or accuse myself. What is that? And then you call that out like a thorn that may be somewhere, like in your finger or something. Those things, if left there, they become inflamed and then infected and then calloused, and they cause all kinds of problems. So just start with one. And then once you call out that saboteur, do your best to hear how they speak to you, like that devil on your shoulder. How do they whisper in your ear and influence you? When do they do that? When are they the loudest? When are they the most cool? When do you notice them? And once you've done that saboteur work, then it becomes really easy to shift over and go opposite of that. If there's a real hero inside of me that was purposely built and or born to kill that guy, this angel on this shoulder, what would he say to me? And then you take it and make it more specific so that you can narrow it down to even giving that guy a name, because there's power in giving it a name. And so when I say servant leader, or I have a whole host of these guys, like an entourage that follows me around, like knights of a round table that I can call upon. And so servant leader, Veritas, all of these fun names that you can really, have fun with, but they become personifications of who you need to be in any given moment. So you call out then the sage in that moment. You take a deep breath and you create an internal script. And you can use this script like, even if I've had a long day, my sage for being with my wife is Zorro, the Mexican hero. Because Zorro's the Latin lover, man, And, nothing gets to Zorro, and he's going to love his woman no matter what. See how I can't even say it like a regular guy. I've installed it so much. Because in that moment, I go, Zorro, Zorro, Zorro. And then, like Tony Robbins teaches us, physiology, focus, and language, I become Zorro. And then no matter what in my life, I get to show up in that moment for my wife, because her life's so much better. Life's so much better when I can show up like that. And so it's just a great way to really, compartmentalize this, and so that you can see, wait a minute. And another great benefit is it externalizes it. So I realize, even though I've made mistakes, even though I've done stupid things, I'm not stupid. And so I can externalize the saboteur and go, oh, wait a minute, I see what you're up to. Nope, I'm not going to internalize this. I'm not stupid. Even if I've made a mistake, this is this. So I refuse the judgment. And then that allows me to really correct the problem so that I can show up differently.
This is, and I still have to have you remind me almost weekly of this, to not be that judgment, to not be that disempowering strain of thoughts, and to not step into that saboteur identity and really become that. We were talking yesterday, I had a mastermind call 2 days ago, and this person was totally bought into this disempowering saboteur-like identity and could not, I love how Dr. Joe Dispenza says this: when you're in the jar, you can't read the label.
That's right.
Like
Dr.
when you're
Joe's got great stuff.
Yeah. But this is just how it feels, right? When you're spinning in this cyclone, you can't read the signs outside of the cyclone. Right. And so, you've really helped me with that. So thank you. Well, let's talk about something real. Because not as if the rest of what we've been talking about isn't real. I'm intangible. One of the most common questions I get is, especially from high-level entrepreneurs and executives and people who have a lot of responsibilities. How do I manage time better? How do I become more dangerous, more capable, more effective with all of these things on my plate? Oh yeah, and I want to be great for my family. I want to be great for myself, take care of myself, be healthy, be happy. For everybody listening, they caught in the intro just how many things you're up to. All these businesses, helping all these people through coaching and events, the infinite number of projects, your nonprofit, Operation Rescue Children, which we'll talk more about in a minute. What are a couple of ways that you have found through the decades to manage your time and your responsibilities and your calendar in a way that doesn't, turn you into a robot?
Yeah. Number one is realize that you're never in it alone. And so you've got to use what I call force multipliers, which is like a turbocharger on the car. The number one force multiplier for life to get more done, if we want to put it that way, is using the time, the talents, the treasures, even the testimonies of other people. That's that 4T, call it, which you can add that 5T as a bonus, which is just time. And when you realize that, then you realize that time is one of your most precious resources, most precious commodities, some people say. And you only have so much of it. So you've got to use it very purposefully. And I teach people that everything is a trade. Nothing is for free. Nothing is for free. Energy, your time, your money, it's not free. And so you must be able to create a system of prioritization so you can make sure that it's worth it. And then you apply that, let's say, to a calendar, and you can break that up into time blocks and ask yourself, what is the best use of this time? You can waste it and you'll never get it back. You can invest it in something. You have to make sure that it's getting you the returns that you really want. And so in order to run multiple businesses, there's no way I could ever do that by myself. I've got great teams of people who help me with that. And so the precursor to that is to become great at meeting people, identifying your needs, aligning my values with theirs, my enterprises with theirs, my talents with them, my desires with them, so that when I do spend time with those people, and if, let's say, a business opportunity can come up, or a way to do an enterprise, or even just to have them in our tribe, you really want to expedite that process so that you can make sure that they're your kind of person. One of my favorite quotes from Warren Buffett is that the most successful people in the world say no to almost everything. And that is a sign of success. That way, if I'm saying yes to something, I've already put it through a process so that I can identify if it's really, really worth it or not, if it matches my priorities. Because if something's on my calendar, I got to mean it. I got to want it. Just like being with you here today. There was a bunch of other things that I could be doing, just like there's a bunch of other things I'm sure that you could have been doing. But it matched and it met all of my criteria of yes, for a multitude of reasons. Number one, because I love and respect you. Number two, this is fun. Number three, it's going to send out a message to other people. And I could keep going with the processes that I put it through, all the filters to make sure that this was a valuable yes.
I love this frame of multiple filters, right? Just like it's screening down, and anything that doesn't make it through that last screen, it just doesn't hit your calendar. And that takes it on the outside, it looks like discipline, but I've come to know personally, and also just in knowing you, it's not really discipline. It's just commitment to what's most important to you. And then it just kind of looks like discipline, right? Like it
looks like
that
external
effect.
leverage. Yeah. And there is external things like your calendar and money and all those things that you always have to be aware of, but it really comes down to what's inside. It has to meet the marks really of my vision of who I want to be. And what I want to do. Another great lesson that I've learned from my mentors and the people I learn from is that relationships are one of the greatest currencies. So really one of the major things that make this worth it to me is my relationship with you.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if you were an ass, I wouldn't be here.
Give it time, Keith. We're not finished yet. I'm just getting warmed up.
We're not done. Yeah, that's right. We still got time.
So I do want to double back on the 4 T's plus time. Can you rattle off what those 4 T's are real fast for anybody who missed it?
Sure. Yeah. Number one is the whole idea of time, right? We'll use that bonus. And it's this idea that as a force multiplier, you want to be able to use the time of other people. Anytime you have a limited resource like time, you want to be able to multiply that, or what we call force multiplication process, by using other people's time. And then, and basically what that means is you enlist other people in what we call leverage great duties to them. It's a little different than the concept of just delegating. Delegating is just handing off something to somebody and letting them do that. And there'll be times for that. But as a visionary of your own life, you always want to make sure that you are in control of what other people are doing for you. You know, that always starts with matching values, relationships, and all of that. So that if you can trust somebody with something that you could do, maybe you needed to do, but you don't want to do, and you utilize their time, you have to make sure that there's alignment with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Okay.
the second one is talents, which is an easy flow into that. And the whole idea of talents is that you got to make sure that what you're asking this person to do for you is that they really have the capability to do it, that they have the competency to do it. And when you can utilize other people's talents, kind of like, let's say, building a football team, you may be the greatest quarterback in the world, but you can't play the game by yourself. You also want to match the other roles that you need. Because if you had an NFL team full of the greatest quarterbacks in the world, you still never win a single game because you need more than just quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got to be aware of the specific talents that they have. And then the idea of treasures. I mean, the most wealthy people in the world use other people's money. It's just a fact. So you find out, all the investment strategies for whether borrowing money or partnering with money, and make sure that you learn that so that you can always keep your money for emergencies. Because
Mm.
we know that keeping your money in store helps you not only to have an alternative plan in case something goes sideways and you need your cash. It also helps build the idea of credibility let's say, as a certified investor. You have to have that baseline before other people will even take you seriously.
Mm.
And then the idea of testimony. This is where you want to share relationships and make sure you capture in every way feedback about what you can be doing to improve yourself, but then also the celebration of what you're doing. That's fantastic. And then you want to be able to unashamedly share the stories behind that. I mean, that's how you build credibility around a brand, as other people bragging on
Mm.
you.
So,
Then I always wrap that back up around to a repeat of time. So I say time is the fifth one. Well, it was also the first one. And so
yeah.
you wrap that back up in time in that you project all of these things moving forward into time, like turning on the nitrous to a car. It can truncate things, it can make things quicker. And so that can be a great thing, but it may not be a great thing if you're not ready. And so this is what we call our readiness formula. You must be willing to take an inventory of yourself and your resources to make sure you're really, really ready.
This is so fun for me because I'm really developing a new relationship with time. Um, two ways: parenting and our 100 days warrior challenge. Um, the parenting part is just bending everything I've got, including my mind, around time. It's just y- not to complain. Just this is just how it goes. Like she's teething and she can't communicate. So just because she's up at 1 and 3 and 5 a.m. doesn't mean that time stops and doesn't mean responsibilities stop. So now I'm in a really interesting way. Now I'm almost compelled and forced to find more leverage uh, to collapse time so that I might have a few more minutes of it.
Mm.
And the idea of using talents and treasures, and when you say treasures, I immediately hear multiple forms of currency. That money is just one form of currency. There are so many forms of currency, referrals, exposure, goodwill, just love. Some people just want
That's right.
love, right? And they'll do a lot for that. Um, Being seen, feeling appreciated. That's a currency that most people don't get enough of. So yeah, I'm really starting to see how more, you would say, force multiplication of those things can create more time.
That's
And
right.
then also in this 100 days challenge, really honoring time. More than anything, this challenge has revealed to me how much time I was leaving on the table in every day. And almost like feeling really guilty about the last like 6 months or so, where I was just like, damn, I didn't,
Mm.
it was like a long winter where I just didn't see it, it was like, I didn't see the summer that was right there for me. And there's so much extra time in the day now that I'm treating this 100-day challenge with such a different form of respect of time. So I don't want to get on my soapbox anymore. I'm going to step off my soapbox.
If I can jump in there with something,
Yeah.
another thing that I teach is the time for money inequity. I mean, you think about it, and you and I have talked about this, man, and this is a sobering thing that we never want to talk about in frivolity. But I mean, how much money would you give for another day with someone that you love, with your daughter, with your wife? I mean, and the answer is all of it.
Mhm.
Especially if you put yourself into a situation where you could really imagine some type of emergency, some type of crisis, where you just long for more than anything, just another moment with them. And so the idea is that not 1 second of your time is worth any amount of money. The only way that you can make up the difference in that and make that worth it at all are the other forms of currency. Because of time and money, those are both forms of currency. And so I fill in those gaps between those two things with the idea of passion, competency, and then also service. And so these are what I call the five currencies. If you can imagine a big gorge like the Grand Canyon and a big bridge going across that, well, time's on one side, money's on the other. The only way that you can cross that to make it ever worth it is through those other currencies. And there's a lot of creative people that I'm sure could add a lot more currencies to that. But I like to just really keep it simple. And the simplicity of it is simply that idea of, okay, the idea is just that, okay, we want to add passion. And passion at its core is just being able to understand that something is worth suffering for. That's the core definition of passion. It's not just a feeling of elation or ecstasy. It's really something that you love so much that you're willing to hurt for it. You're willing to sacrifice for it. And so if you want to really increase your ability of in the efficiency of trading time for money, where you get paid more, one of the first things you have to do is ask yourself, what am I willing to suffer for? What's my real passion here? What's the real why? And then that brings you over to the idea of competency. A part of the pain that you'll have to go through is crossing those bridges to become more competent at what you do. And we know that those bridges, in and of itself, of competency is discovery. You have to research. You have to be disciplined. You have to constantly make that decision over and over again to become ultimately competent
Mm.
or to have a sense of mastery surrounding stuff. And people are always the most fulfilled when they have something that they're a master of. Really, really good. That becomes an easy avenue of doing that. It's such a good thing. And
Mm.
then that allows you to then, in that next level, be able to find something where you can really be of great service to. And being of great service is when you realize that you have and all that you earn and all that you can do isn't just for you. You also have an obligation to contribute and help other people and really serve them and make their lives better. And then if you can get paid really, really well by doing all that, man, there's your avenue right there.
And that's something that I've also learned from you. It's not if you can get paid really well. It's
Mm.
how do you shift your thinking and how do you shift your thoughts, your words, and your deeds? How do you conform them around the idea that you can absolutely get paid really well to do these things? What are the steps to make that happen, though? That's the passion right there, right? And I love this concept that passion means something worth suffering for. Our 100 days challenge, all of us are suffering right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, we're all ice baths. I'm trying to think of some of the more extreme things that guys have done. Like last year, Ace wrote a book in 100 days, a full book in 100 days, all the research, all the writing, everything in 100 days. Lots of suffering, But, but the term suffering is so relative because it was more like growth, right? It was discomfort, and it was suffering and maybe in time, and this is new, and this is hard or difficult, and worth it. Right. And there's
Right.
something that makes this suffering kind of neutral at the end of it. Actually, not neutral, not neutral. Like that's not an adequate description. More just worth it. That's what I'm going to go with. So for you, what are you suffering for? What are you suffering for? What are you suffering through in your passions right now? You know, as somebody who's been doing this for so long, where are your passions falling now?
Oh man, you always ask these questions. I got to actually think a minute. Oh, you're calling me out.
I should
Oh
call the
man.
show Think and Drink with Chris. That's
Yeah, think and drink and then don't think.
and then don't think.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, number one, my family, my faith, those are the things that are always at the top of my list. But with an endeavor that is just really worth it, it would nonprofit that we're doing, and you're aware of, man. And those of you guys who know Chris, man, he's the kind of guy you want on your team. Yeah, you came to our event, but you came and you talked about from a passionate place our organization, where it would have seemed kind of salesmanish, like we were doing too much of an ask to ask that. But man, I sure appreciate you, and I want to say this on air, how you stepped up and challenged every participant there to give to our nonprofit to help stop the human trafficking and sex slavery of children. And it created a whole movement of people not only being aware of it, but also giving.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. You
Thank you
joined
for
me in my passion there.
yeah, for sure. And that's I went to a retreat back in like 2018 with the guys at The One Thing, the book The One Thing. And Jay Papasan said something I'll never forget. I went up to him and I personally said, "Hey, I want to just pull you aside and tell you, your book changed my life. Your book continues
Mm,
to change my life. It affects the way I make decisions every day. And I just want to say thank you because I think that's what you were going for, right? To write something that would really change lives."
mm.
And he said, I appreciate that. And I want to infect the world with this work.
Wow.
The way he said that and the certainty he had when he said it, I was like, I'm never going to forget that. And when you first introduced Operation Rescue Children to me, you said it in different words, but you said it the same way. I
Mm,
want to put this on men's hearts, women's hearts around the world and make it to where they can never unring this bell, where they have to do something about it. And I already, this is the fascinating thing about sort of like levels of awareness and competency. I already felt that way going to Texas and
mm.
going to the event, but seeing these operators do a demonstration, hearing firsthand from the guys who save these women and children. And this moment I'm going to talk about, watching
Yeah.
them do this demo and watching 40 guys just almost brought to their knees because of the reality that this is happening in every town in America and around the world. It made it real. You couldn't
Yeah.
hide from it and you couldn't go anywhere. And I immediately felt this certainty of I have to infect the world with this contribution. And that's what started that whole scenario we were just talking about, where I think we had 40, was it about 40 people, 100% of us gave something that day. It might not have
That's
been
right.
money. It might have been time, resources, um, exposure, right? But yeah, thank you for opening my eyes to it, number one, which I want you to do here for everybody else in a second. And then also making it real, not just some
Mm.
concept in a foreign land that I have the pleasure of not thinking about. So let me back up for 1 second. What we're really talking about is Keith's nonprofit organization called Operation Rescue Children. And Keith, I'll let you frame it up and tell everybody what it is and what it does. But I'm not just giving it lip service. I've been donating for a while now and will continue to every single year that my business is in existence. This is, well, Keith, I want to shut up. I want to let you describe what's happening because there's nobody more qualified at this point to talk about Operation Rescue Children and enroll people in this vision.
Oh, thank you, Chris. And thank you for your generosity. You're really helping us save children. I mean, anytime I begin to broach the subject, I always become emotional just because of
Yeah.
the reality of this.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that children right here in this country are being stolen and forced into sex slavery. And there's no other way to say that. And you think about it, people, when they think about this, they're thinking of some grown, but no, we're talking infants, little girls mostly. The average age now keeps being reduced. It went from 11 to 9 years old.
Uh,
And there's a market, for kids even younger than that. Like I said, even infants. And when this came to my attention, I thought, what? You always heard about it, but I didn't know how nefarious and terrible the problem really was. There are more slaves in the world today than the entire population of Canada, almost 50 million. About every minute in this country, a child is forced into slavery. And out of those people who are forced into slavery, those kids, only about 1% ever make it out alive.
Oh,
And these are at the hands of terrorists and cartels and organized crime syndicates because it's super profitable, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. Because you can sell drugs once, an ounce of this or a gram of that. You can sell an illegal weapon once, but you can sell a little girl over and over.
oh,
And once you're done with them,
God.
you can just dump them and you get away. And so these organized criminals are realizing that this is, a big business, big business. And where we come in, Operation Rescue Children, is that we train the men and women who go out there and fight for these kids, that save these kids. And so we have really a 10x effect. And people are like, well, why should we donate to you or pray for you or be interested in what you do? I mean, think about it. I mean, you get this, Chris. You and I will get here, man, and we'll get very seriously very quickly.
Yeah.
Think about if this was a little girl,
Yeah.
and someone had snatched them up from the mall, because this happens to high SES people, not just poor people in off some dark place of the world. No, it happens right here in our cities and in our rural towns. And if your little girl was snatched, who would you want to come and save you? I mean, the very best, the very most qualified of anybody, right?
Yeah.
And one of the problems that we realize is that police departments are underfunded. And I'm not getting into politics here. That's just a fact.
It's just
And
that's a neutral fact, regardless of your politics, right? Like,
yeah, they're underfunded. And so much of the time, even the high level police departments and the people that we train, they have to choose between vest and training. And so, yeah, they may have to, they have a hard decision like, what am I going to choose? Because all these guys realize that they've got to constantly keep up the training because they're in these high pressured life and death situations. And so, with that little caveat, we'll go back to the question: who would you want? Wouldn't you want the most highly trained, the most well equipped person to come and save your little girl from the clutches of the darkness that would ravage them and rape them?
I mean, I'm choking back tears just because knowing, I don't want to say their names, but knowing some of the guys that were at Undisputed Mastery, that the guys who are literally the boots on the ground that do this, I went up to him afterward and I said, there's this overwhelming sense of gratitude I have for you. And this has never, gratefully never, touched my life other than this. But to think of some parent out there beside themselves because their kid was stolen into slavery, and to think about these guys going and working as absolute dangerous, we might joke and say highly, what's the term? Highly skilled violence providers. But the truth is these guys dedicate their life in every moment of this work to being the best.
That's
and
right.
that takes a special type of person. That takes a
lifetime
courageous,
commitment.
yeah. And not just with the weapons, with everything. In part why you're involved here, because the psychological toll of this work alone would require the best of the best.
That's right. I mean, just imagine, a team coming in, dispatching the bad guys. They've done an investigation. They find them, they arrest them, and then you look over in the corner, or you open up a door to a bedroom, and there you see these kids that have sometimes been raped, a dozen or more times that day, little girls. And that is where I come, because a part of what we do is with Tuhan Harley. He teaches them the best tactics in the world. It's like the most elite military guys have. But we also teach them how to be resilient, because you have to have a focus on that mission to be able to go into that darkness and see that and experience that. It's good work, but man, it takes its toll on you. And then they've got to go back to their families,
right,
and function in society. And and that training never stops. Just like how the bad guys are never going to stop snatching these kids. in the same way, we'll never stop. And that's where our passion is because something, and we are, and we're making a difference.
And not just one time, but you're training the operators, you're equipping the operators, you're helping them with the psychological ramifications. And probably my favorite part, your intention is to hire the victims you free. And can you imagine a more dedicated person on the team than somebody who has literally risen from those ashes? I mean, that just gives me chills down my spine, because that, again, man, it chokes me up. It makes it so real. This is not, this podcast is not, a dial for dollars type situation, but it's such an opportunity to bring the reality of this into the ears of, I think, millions of people. That we like to pretend it's something we can look away from. We like to pretend it's something that wouldn't happen to us. And, I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's where the Kentucky Derby runs every year. And we've been talking about this, that every major sporting event, entertainment event where, maybe 1 million people or so, especially, something that's ongoing like this, they know this is going to be a big event. It's a human trafficking hotspot. It's a sex slave trafficking hotspot. And it happens in anywheresville, USA or beyond. That reality alone should send a chill down your spine and make you think you need to do something here.
That's right.
And having met the guys on the team, even the behind the scenes guys on the team and ladies on the team, having met them personally, I had zero doubt or qualification with donating time, money, effort, resources, all of it. So if you're at all on the fence about offering help here, just keep in mind that there, as we've been talking about, more currencies than just donating cash. Exposure, right? Sending this podcast, sending a link to Operation Rescue Children, which we will include in the show notes here, to people, and just say, hey, look, this is on my heart. This is important. This is real. And these guys are stepping in to stop it and train other people to stop it and equip other people to stop it. Hey, Keith, how would you like to wrap that up? Because I feel like we could keep going, but at the end of the day, this is the mission.
Yeah. And it's this, anytime that you have a good work, it takes money. I mean, we're a nonprofit. We don't make any money off of this. Our money that anybody gives, it goes directly to helping these people, to training these people. What I would ask people to do is just check us out for yourself. I mean, really, if you have it within your heart to really see this, get online and research the Global Slavery Index, which is something you can search, and it'll back up everything that we're saying.
Yeah.
And then you think about, who is it that's going to come and rescue? We want to touch your heart by saying this is real and this happens right here. I live in a place in central Arkansas, and we busted a ring right here in our little county. This is invasive everywhere, and it's getting worse. And so we're needed more than ever. So my ask of people is, don't just take my word for it. Get out there and research. Get on our website and look. And if there's anything that you can do, if above anything else, like you said, Chris, share this idea so that you can learn the signs of what trafficking looks like, so that you can be aware and teach your kids what to look for, what to be aware of, because this happens. And this is happening right here in the United States.
Oh, it's so heavy. Let's lighten it up a little bit. Because I really could stay there all day and just beg and plead for more from people. We've been coaching together for years, and I have learned more from you about coaching than anyone else. In the spirit of lightening this up, how have you seen my evolution from when we got started working under the Tony Robbins umbrella? Multiple business changes. Lindsay and I got engaged. We got married. We had Eva. I take this work very seriously. I take it as my calling in life, my passion, my suffering. My cross to bear is that I get to help people, and what a fortunate cross to bear. So I'm just curious. I never get the chance to really ask you this question because we run out of time on our calls. But what's your perspective on that? Because I'm working to be the example for people, and I don't want any deception that I've got it figured out, or that I've arrived somehow, or that life is easier now because I've been in coaching with Keith for years.
Well, I mean, it's a good question. And the answer is really simple. Man, you have really honed your skill sets and found a niche for yourself to really have your passion. When you and I first started coaching together, I mean, you were uncertain. You were unclear about who you
Yeah.
were. And
Yeah.
you were coming from the world you came from, looking to bridge a gap into this new world. And there was a lot of lessons that you had to learn. Lessons about money, lessons about how you go and you get money, the lessons about what success really means, and then developing that with a very successful wife that you're married to yourself. So I've seen you grown as a man, and one of the things that I'm the most proud of you for, Chris, is how you help other people be successful. One of the signs of a lack of maturity and even narcissism, some kind of personality defect, is when other people can't celebrate other people's wins, when people aren't happy for other people's successes. And that's one of the things that you do so very well. And we know from the law of attraction, when you go out there and help people be successful, then that always comes back to you. And one of your superpowers is connecting people, recognizing talent, recognizing greatness, and then bringing that out in people. And you do it with a genuine heart. And so I've seen you develop that. Whereas I'm not saying you didn't have that before, but you've really honed it
Yeah.
in a masterful
Yeah.
way. And it really shows.
Thanks, brother. I definitely wasn't fishing for compliments. I could see how that would be like, if you didn't know the two of us, that might have seemed like that. But I think one of the things I've learned from you is this skill of looking at things with just pure honesty and being able to receive good feedback and the bad feedback, not bad feedback. It's not bad feedback. It's just, let's say, uncomfortable feedback,
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
Like when you love somebody enough to be the most honest person in their world, that's something special.
That
And
is special.
and I think coaches like me and you, that's what we endeavor to be, is someone that honest and true. So thank
That's
you for
right.
all that, brother. I appreciate it. And
You're
I
welcome.
wouldn't have the show and all these other things without your influence. So
It's my
let's do
honor, brother.
this. Before I ask you the two like famous podcast questions, I'm saying famous. We haven't aired anything yet. They will be, damn it.
Yeah, they will be.
Before I get there, is there anything else on your heart that you'd like to say or encourage people with, or even just share?
Um, I would just say simply, always seek to be your best self. Ask yourself the question, right? And just a simple filter, which is, how is this bringing out my best? And we know one of the ways to do that is to seek to bring out the best in someone else. So before you confront someone, text somebody, meet someone, talk to somebody, just spend a couple seconds, breathe, get centered, and ask yourself, what would be the best? What would that look like? What would that be like before you do? And with that simple filter, that'll change your life. That'll help you get up and exercise because that's what's best for you. It'll help you eat better, make better food choices because that's what's best for you. It'll help you talk sweeter and nicer and more loving because that's what's best for you and for others. It'll help you forgive. It'll help in so many ways. Research, be more disciplined with your money, become an investor. Every single category of life. This is that magnifying force multiplying question that can change it. So I'd say that.
Perfect. Well said. And you represent this. You don't just preach this. You walk this. For everybody listening, we're in this 100-day warrior challenge. It's 100 days. It's not what would we say? It's not an easy commitment. And everybody was kind of bouncing off the walls like, well, what are we supposed to do for 100 days? How do we know if we're doing enough? How do we know if we're doing too much? And Keith goes, here's how. Boom. Just laid out his 100-day plan and the commitments that he was willing to honor every single day for 100 days. And I'm going to speak for the other guys in my group anyway. We're like, holy shit, how does Superman over here expect us to keep up with him? And we were all freaking out. and we were all intimidated, but we were all, more importantly, inspired, because he really does walk this line of, if I'm going to inspire the people to be their best, what does that mean for me today? I better show up and I better give it my all. And that's why I just pulled this out of my pocket, this challenge coin, because every day when I put it in my pocket, I'm like, you know what? That's what this is all about. Not me bitching about my leg workout this morning because I was tired.
That's it. That's right. Yeah, hard stuff, right? And it chisels us, it sharpens us. We've got to push ourselves. That's exactly right. And there's another reason why I like this bourbon. Oh, it is high proof. You can taste it, you can tell it. You know you're not just drinking water.
It's meant to be a little dangerous, right? A little daring. So let's go back to that. If you were a cocktail,
ooh,
we have so many different sages in there, but if we could break out Keith into different components, like 1 part this and 2 parts that, what do you think your cocktail would be built like?
oh man, what a great question. Gotta create a recipe. One part of me wants to say just the most simple, straightforward cocktail of all that probably wouldn't even qualify as a cocktail. It would be just something that would just straight out punch you in the face when you drink it. You drink it, it'd be called punch face or something like that. But then there's that other part that I really love, just like with this bourbon, all of those notes and subtleties, because every person has complexity. I would say it would be most likely some type of scotch that had something in it, whether it's those fancy cherries that you put in there, or something like that gave it a sense of depth. And I would want there to be a blend of other types of whiskeys. Perhaps even, where you'd mix a nice peaty scotch with some type of just, strong bourbon. And so that, then you put a hint of, let's say, a cherry in there. And I think I would probably call it a cherry bomb.
A cherry ball or cherry bomb?
Bomb.
How
Cherry
come?
Bomb. Because you have to the cherry, so you have to get to the goal, I guess, would be, as you can see my filter, to get to the bottom of the glass so you can get the cherry. So it'd have to be weighted down underneath it, maybe even put into an ice cube. That'd be cool. And so that you have to melt, it's a small ice cube, and then boom, right? You finally get the cherry. You've already drank all the alcohol, and it have its effect on you.
Ooh, a cherry.
And as the ice cube melted, you get the notes of the cherry. So it would be, a developmental and progressive thing, as I'm imagining it.
Developmental and progressive. So here's what I wrote down as you were describing that. Obviously, the developmental and progressive is exactly what I would expect of Dr. Keith Waggoner, with multiple PhDs and multiple black belts, and right, and always seeking a new project. But the spirits and the strength really stood out to me. Knowing your ties to your Native American history and in the spirit of that, and then the strength, not just the punch face, which I love. And I thought that's what you were going to call it for a minute there. But the depth of strength in different ways, in different expressions. So, well, Dr. Keith Waggoner Cherry Bomb. It's not Veritas, but it's definitely a fascinating name. Anything else you'd love to leave for listeners here before we go?
I would just say, man, thank you for having me, Chris. You do such great work, and you're very inspirational. Thank you for having me
on. Thank you, brother. I love you. I appreciate you. Everybody, actually, Dr. Keith, where should somebody start if they want to learn more or work with you?
They can check out Keith M. Waggoner, WAGGONER.com. You can also look me up just online, just Keith Waggoner. But my website is keithmwaggoner.com or Mastery. And of course, we'd love them always to circle back around to OperationRescueChildren.org, and just consider, within your heart, if you would like to join our team and make a difference.
Keith, my audio might have locked up there because of our storm that's passing through. Can you say the last 2 websites again real quick?
Sure. Undisputedmastery.com. That's our events company. And then operationrescuechildren.org. And if you would just get on there and look, and if you have it in your heart, we'd love for you to join us and join the fight in helping us stop human slavery.
Well said, brother. Well, everybody, we'll also put links in the show notes so it can make your life a little bit easier. Just scroll down, tap those, and get involved. And also do us a favor. We work really hard in our passions, as we've been talking about. Share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it today. There's so much wisdom and strength and spirit in Dr. Keith's words here. So please share it with somebody you know would get some value out of it. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, chewing it. Now I got this Kentucky Chew thing going on. Thank you for tuning in with us. Dr. Keith, cheers, brother. I love you.
Cheers, brother.